Dave, if you want to start from Sky.
Hello again, Roy.
Hi, Dave.
Let's start, obviously you've been out there with the players today and I spoke to you earlier, but how's the confidence and the spirit among the group of players from how you see it over the last week or so?
Yeah, nothing's really changed. The spirit has been excellent for a long time here now. So defeats, they hurt you and they make you sad for a while, especially if you feel that you could have done something other than be defeated in the game. But the spirit's been very, very good. The work this week has been excellent, and of course confidence. You know, your confidence is bound to be damaged somewhat if you're losing games like we have done now. But I think it's more damaged if you feel that you're not playing the right sort of football, that things aren't going to plan. I think when things go to plan, basically, and you put in a pretty good performance and then you lose, it hurts, and it hurts badly. But I don't know it has quite the same effect on your confidence as when you lose games, because everything you've tried to do hasn't worked, and you don't feel you're capable of playing the game you want to play.
And in terms of your striking options this week, have they improved fitness-wise? It's all available?
Yeah, I mean, last week we had the blow of not having Max Meyer and Alex Sherlock with us, and this week we have, so that's a big advantage, I think, because those two players are two very important members of our group, both of whom, of course, are quite capable of playing in the team. So the only injuries we have really are the ones that we've had for a while now. But even they're making good progress. Johnny Williams, for example, will train tomorrow. That's good. So the only ones we won't have really, perhaps Wale is back in full training. Scott Dan is working very hard and will play in the under-23 fixture on Monday. So it's basically Christian and Joel Ward, both of whom are dealing well with the injuries they have.
And Connor's still working his way back.
Yeah, but he's doing okay. I mean, to be fair, Connor, we are naturally a little bit reticent with him because of the enormously long period of time when he couldn't play first team football, and of course the number of times when he's tried to come back and has broken down. So I think it's right from his side and from our side that we are careful with him. But to be honest, he comes to every training session. In the training session he completes everything that the other players complete, so there's no reason for me to have any fears about him. But the more training he can get and the more games he can get, he will of course get closer and closer to Premier League status, if you like.
And with Christian's injury and obviously Connor's fitness issues, there's obviously been an issue around scoring goals. Is that something that you're looking at in terms of the January window and planning for something there?
No, we haven't got as far as that yet. I mean, the January window's a long way off, and there's a lot of time that we need to spend trying to win football matches before that transfer window comes around. And we're more interested really in working hard with the forwards we have. We have Connor, you've mentioned. We have Alex Sherlock, who's also been mentioned. Of course, there's Wilf and Jordan Ayew and the Sully Kaikai. Now there's 5 players, all of whom are more than capable of playing in forward positions, and that's not counting Andros, who did it well at Everton. So, you know, we have players already in our group that we're working with to try and get those goals that we need, because it's a very obvious truth that if you want to win a football match, you've got to score goals, and at the moment we aren't, and that really is causing some of the defeats, because we don't find ourselves in that comfortable position of maybe leading the game, which opens the game up for you rather than the other way around.
I don't know whether you saw any of the games from last night in the Europa League, but I mean, everyone's talking about Ruben Loftus-Cheek. He scored a hat-trick. Were you pleased to see him?
Absolutely. I was delighted. I mean, I don't think I've ever tried to disguise my admiration for him as a football player and as a person. I thought he was excellent during his time with us. I was really happy when he got chosen to go with England to the World Cup, and happy also when he got a chance to play in some of the games over there. So it was nice to see him come back. I watched the first half of that game, and I previously, of course, had watched the Arsenal game, because that's the one that's closest to us, but Chelsea aren't far away either, so I had a pretty good eye on both teams.
Looking at the Arsenal game, obviously in fantastic form. They're going for their 12th win. Have you noticed any areas though that you can perhaps exploit? Have you worked out a way of managing to stop them?
They're difficult questions, those, because all teams obviously have areas of their play where I'm pretty sure that the coach feels they could be stronger. But I think as a unit at the moment, Arsenal are playing extremely well. They're working very hard for each other. They're pressurising the ball very well. I don't see any particular weaknesses or any obvious weaknesses. So it's going to be a question for us really of making certain that we work hard enough to minimise their opportunities, to try and control them as well as we can. We saw Leicester City do that extremely well in the first half of the last league game on Monday night. So we know that if a team works well as a team, it's possible that you can have a situation in the game where you're playing evenly with them. In the second half, of course, Arsenal, they found another gear and made it very, very difficult, and we're aware that can happen to us as well. But there are no secrets, there are no words really that will enable us to get any points from the game. It's really going to be a question of what we can do on the field, how hard working we can be, how organised as a team we can be, and then a question of hoping we create enough chances and are able to take some of them in. The fortunate thing for us is that we are playing at home. That might sound strange at the moment because we haven't won our home games, but we know that we can and that we will, because the support we get from the Crystal Palace crowd at Selhurst Park is very, very important. It can make the atmosphere an atmosphere which is very congenital to us, playing better and being more aggressive and on the front foot, and I'm hoping for that tomorrow.
After the game against Everton last week, do you feel like late goals are an issue? There's been a few conceded this season. Is that something?
Well, you have to analyse every goal when you talk about those things. You know, these days, which are statistic dominated, people want to make a trend out of everything. It depends how the late goals come. The one against Bournemouth was particularly galling to lose to a late penalty. It was, I suppose, to some extent less galling to concede the late goal against Everton because they'd thrown a lot of forwards onto the field, and it was a goal which they will be proud of, and that we don't necessarily need to look at the enormous mistake on our side. And the other late goals you're referring to are the ones where we've conceded a second goal late in the game because we've been 1-0 down, often taking the game to the opposition and playing it pretty much largely in their half, and we've got into extra time, or added on time, and unfortunately the opposing team have broken away as we've sent so many players forward and scored a second goal. That's the old question of are you going to settle for the 1-0 and keep playing the way you've been playing and make certain they don't get a chance to score a second goal, or are you going to throw a bit of caution to the wind as the game goes on and run the risk that we're going for the goal but we're opening ourselves up?
And just a final one from me. I know the game's lawmakers are discussing whether to ban making substitutions in added time at the end of a game to reduce time wasting. Is that something you would be in favour of?
I think it's a complicated subject. I mean, does that mean also then that the moment the 90 minutes is up and you go into extra time or added on time, which can be as much as 7, 8, it could even be 12 minutes because there could have been an injury in the game. Does that mean that you would have to play with 10 men if a player got injured? And then, of course, the next question is, for the guy who actually wants to waste time, who's actually going to decide whether the player who's gone down feigning injury is actually injured or not? So I think it's a simple statement which will have to be reviewed very carefully. I personally am not one of the people who are prone to make substitutes in that period between 90 and 94 minutes because I don't think it serves any purpose, and I don't think it even wastes an awful lot of time under normal circumstances. I think if you were really serious about time wasting, you would have to look at other areas of the game where time is obviously wasted. And the bottom line one day will be that if you really do decide that we want to go back to the period of time that was suggested a game lasted, if I go back a few years, people talked about 60 to maybe 65 minutes of effective time. The only way you're ever going to definitely get that is by having a stopwatch and stopping the game like they do in basketball. That's something that has been mooted in the past and the idea has been dismissed, but that would be the only 100% serious way of making certain. If you say, well, the game's 90 minutes, but in fact we're only going to see 60 to 65 minutes of play, every time the ball goes out of play, you'd have to stop it.
Okay, thank you. And Kelly?
Well, you touched upon the atmosphere at Selhurst and you love playing at home. Why do you think you have struggled there this season?
I don't know, we haven't scored goals. We haven't played that badly as such. We've often had a good percentage of possession in the game. We've played well enough, we think. Certainly the game against Liverpool, if I go back, the game against Wolverhampton Wanderers, they're games really where I think that the way we've played and what we've done in the game has been sufficient to get us points, but we haven't taken them. So we've got to just keep working to make certain that the chances are created and that we are denying the opposition their opportunity to score goals, which we've done reasonably well. I mean, we lost 2-0 against Liverpool and 2-0 against Southampton, but both of those goals, the second goals, were scored in the 92nd and 95th minutes when we were actually close to getting an equaliser. And we lost 1-0 to Wolves. Who else we lost to here?
We drew with Newcastle.
And we drew with Newcastle, yeah. And in that Newcastle game, in actual fact, in the last minutes of the game, we had the chance of a lifetime to win it, but missed an open goal.
Luca's obviously had a fantastic record from the spot, missed one last week. He's come out this week and said that if you get another, he will take it. How confident would you be if the referee did point to the spot this weekend? Well,
he's our designated penalty kick taker, and I'd have been disappointed if he'd have given an interview whereby he said, because I've now missed this penalty, I don't believe I deserve to be the designated penalty taker. That would disappoint me. He scored so many penalties for us last season. I have every confidence that if we get a penalty on Sunday, he'll score it.
Unai Emery, I don't know if you've come across him before. What have you made of his start in England as a manager?
I think he started extremely well. He's not someone I know well. I was once on a UEFA meeting for teams that were in the Champions League. I was invited because Fulham had actually got to the final of the newly formed Europa League, so I met him there, and then I met him again earlier this season when we organised a game behind closed doors because we had players that needed a game and Arsenal had players that needed a game, so they hosted a game, so I met him there briefly. But of course I know a lot about him and his career because I followed his work, in particular at Seville and then Paris Saint-Germain, and I know what a good coach he is, and he's proving that. What he's done is he's brought back that energy and that quality of play that Arsene also had for many years when certainly he took the league by storm. Arsene playing that type of football. People used to talk about Arsenal walking the ball in the net because they were so good around the box, and they didn't just shoot at sight, they played around you 2 more times before setting the ball up for someone just to walk it into the goal. We're seeing signs of that as well. But of course to do that you need the quality of players that have been accumulated over the years, and a lot of the players that are doing very well at the moment are players that Arsene actually brought in, and he's inherited them and is getting the best out of them. So 11 straight wins is an incredible record, and we've just got to try and do our level best that they don't make it 12 because we need the points.
Thank you. Emma?
Roy, on from that in that case, how do you give your team the belief that they can get something against an Arsenal side in such great form?
Well, no real answer to that question, is there? I mean, the fact is, the only belief you can give people is the assurance that they will have if they know that going onto the field of play, everything they're being asked to do is well within their capabilities, and it's things that they think themselves are going to be important for them in defending against the threat that Arsenal pose, or attempting to find some gaps, if you like, in the Arsenal defence to profit by it. And as a football coach or manager, there's nothing more you can do than that. You know, there seems to be a belief that has always been in football, but if anything, it has been not amplified, and that is that there are certain words that a manager or a coach can say that will, you know, make a team that on paper is obviously the underdogs, and on paper maybe don't possess the wealth of talent that the opposing team has, that there's a few words that can be said which will turn that on its head. Unfortunately, I don't know what those words are, but if there's anyone out there who can tell me what those words are, then please write them on a piece of paper, send it to me, and I'll happily use them in my next press conference.
On a similar subject, Luca said that after the Everton defeat, that he said that we have spoken about the fact that Crystal Palace didn't start last season very well, but they obviously finished it in a positive way, and he said that that has given them confidence going forward. I don't know if that was a conversation that you instigated, if the players wanted to speak amongst themselves about continuing to believe that.
We have a lot of meetings in a football club, you know, we do the bulk of our tactical work on the field wherever we can, but we have a lot of meetings too, and in a lot of those meetings, even while we're discussing our tactical work, other subjects come up. The bottom line is this, that, you know, last year at the same period of time we had 3 points, I think, or possibly 4, and we'd lost 7 games on the trot, but we ended up in 11th place, and in fact, if it hadn't have been for Chelsea, unfortunately, being unable to get a point up at Newcastle in the last game of the season, we'd have finished in the top 10. I think we're playing a lot better at the start of this season than we did at the start of this season. You know, last season there were games where, quite frankly, you know, we lost quite heavily, and we really deserved to lose quite heavily. I think the general consensus has been this season that in a lot of the games we played, we haven't even really deserved to lose, and we've been a little bit unfortunate not to take points. Now, it's going to be the next 29 performances that decide everything, and that's quite a lot of performances to come. So it's disappointing or saddening to see ourselves closer to the bottom than the top, but the fact is the only thing that matters is the table in May, and we've got to make certain that if we're doing anything right in our performances, we keep doing that. And if there are things to correct, well, that's what we'll be working on every day on the training field, just like we've done for the last 13 or 14 months.
And finally for me, someone answered this about home form, but if memory serves, I think other Crystal Palace managers, what they've done is actually tried to prepare for a home game slightly differently, maybe taking the team to a hotel, but it sounds as if you don't think it's the preparations that are the reason why you aren't.
No, they aren't. I mean, but of course you know, when the points that you hope to get aren't coming your way, of course you analyse and assess everything. But I'm certainly not convinced at the moment that it's anything to do with our preparation for the game. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to play as well as we did against Liverpool. We wouldn't have been able to dominate the match against Wolves as we did, and we wouldn't have been able to dominate the match against Newcastle as we did. You know, basically the reason we didn't do as well as we would have liked in those games has got nothing to do with the actual football played in the 94, 95 minutes. It's the fact that we couldn't keep a clean sheet, and unfortunately we couldn't take some of the chances we created. So you have to be careful sometimes that you don't start looking for problems that actually aren't there, because otherwise you might be disturbing. All of last season our preparation for home games stayed pretty much the same, and that was good enough for us. So I don't see any reason at the moment to sort of delve, if you like, into that side of things, but I'm not averse to doing it, and certainly we have a lot of conversations with the players in terms of our training times, you know, what times we meet before home games, what time we're going to meet, and how we're going to prepare our travel for away games. We involve the players in that, so it's a constant dialogue. I'm not averse to a change, but I don't see any reason for it at the moment.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the broadcast.